So we don't need our laptops at the moment. Travis, I'm going to talk here for about 10 minutes. I'm going to talk about simulation theory. So you've sort of entertained this idea. Maybe you're thinking about how it's quite similar to the Matrix, but we're going to see it does bear a subtle difference that is quite important for us. So, hey guys. So I'm going to tell you about Moore's law, okay? So Moore's law says that every 18 months, computer processing power doubles, okay? And so what we've got here is 20 years evolution of computer game graphics, best exhibited by Lara Croft, because you can see it's the same game or the same game series, and you can see what they're doing, the way they make it more and more realistic. Okay, here our body's made up of rectangles and triangles, and then in the next instance they just use more rectangles and triangles and more rectangles and triangles, and so they can fit more data into the character, and so they can use heaps of rectangles and triangles so that to us from far away it looks like a real human being. That's sort of where we're at, the stage we're at the moment. On the left we've got a computer in the 1950s. Okay, and on the right we've got a supercomputer, way more processing power than the one you have in the 1950s. My grandpa was born in like 1946, and he's continually amazed at these smartphones and what they can do and the capacity that they have. Okay, so we've got computer processing power just getting better and better and better, and video games. VR sets. Who's got a VR set here? Does anyone? Yeah, Jack? Anyone else? Okay, so these are coming out. This is a technology that's emerging. I've tried it once. I felt very dizzy, but it sort of raises the question. We've got graphics that are getting more and more real. We have this technology. Where is it leading to? What is it pointing towards? Oh, guys.
Humans being having in the simulation.
Yeah. So, what we're looking at then is we're looking at a specific argument, because you've probably heard the idea of simulation theory, you've probably seen some memes about it. We're looking at a very specific argument that came out in 2003 by a Swedish philosopher called Nick Bostrom. Now I'm going to simplify it for you because it is a little bit more complex than what I present here. But he says there are two possibilities in the future, okay? Either humans will invent and run simulations, or they will not. Now this is not a black and white fallacy, okay? This is not a false dichotomy, because these two options are mutually exclusive. If one happens, then it means the other does not. If the other happens, then it means the first one does not. So it's not a black and white fallacy. These two possibilities are the only two options. Either they're going to do it or they're not. If we try and think of reasons why they wouldn't, maybe humans go extinct, nuclear war, blow each other up. Maybe they have the technology, but they don't think it's moral to run simulations. Okay, but if they do, what would it be like? What kind of things would we expect? So we could think of it like if we're talking about VR technology and the graphics getting better and better and better, we could think of it like an immersive movie. Okay, so you can watch a movie, but not only just watching it on a screen, but being immersed in it completely, where all the events are happening around you, and you're even participating in it. So we can imagine historians of the future, this is what Bostrom says, simulating various historical scenarios. So here we have a clip from the film Troy. All right, so they're going to battle. You could be a part of that. These would not be simplistic simulations of today. With the vast computing power at their disposal, the simulations can be extremely fine-grained. Every building, every geographical feature, every individual. And each of these individuals could be given the same level of computing power, complexity, and intelligence as a living human. Okay, so we've got Moore's law, computing power doubling every 18 months. Okay, all of a sudden we've got all this computer processing power. We look back at that image of Lara Croft. Okay, not only are we doing that to the main character, but we're also giving it thoughts, a consciousness, the ability to think, to rationalize. Immersive movie. Of course, these might never realize their software. To create an accurate simulation, the perceptions of the simulated individuals would have to be indistinguishable from the people living in the real world. This is a computer game. Who recognises this computer game? Who plays this one? The Sims, great computer game. It's to simulate real life. Okay, you design people, how they look, the house that they live in. Or this one, what's this from? Travis?
That would be Skyrim.
Skyrim, okay, so it's sort of fantasy world where you're immersed as dragons and wizards and spells and magic. So you look at the people in these games. So you could set it up that if you think about these people, you play this game. If you play this game, you're running around, you're controlling someone. You could set a simulation up so that these people actually thought they were real people. Not only acted like it on the surface. Okay, if you go into this game, these people sort of act like real people. They're sort of a bit glitchy in parts, but you could set it up so that they were more than just an NPC. What's an NPC?
Non-player character.
Non-playable character. There's a meme about NPCs, isn't there? There's a meme about NPCs that there are these people that don't think, they just sort of act, and sometimes they glitch out, and they're the NPCs. You could set it up so that all of these people, all of these NPCs, actually had thoughts and reasons and justifications for doing things. The other things you could do is you could run simulations at infinite speeds. So it could be, if we are living in some sort of simulated universe, it could be that yes, the last 13.5 billion years have occurred, but they've occurred in 1 minute in the real world. They're playing at supersonic speed. Okay? Or it could be that the simulation was created to begin 5 seconds ago, and that you've been created in this moment in the simulation with memories implanted in your mind. So there's both of those possibilities are true if you're running simulations. So here's some other thoughts as well. What if when you die, someone takes off the VR headset and says, how was the simulation? Or it could be that when you become aware that you're living in a simulation, that the simulation ceases and terminates. Or it could be that someone's watching, and if the simulation's not interesting, then they're going to turn it off and you'll expire with a piece of digital software. So let's explain why this is different from the Matrix. Okay, so if you think about the Matrix, there's a computer world, okay, but you are essentially a brain in a vat. You're in one of these womb-like things, living. You've got a physical body in the real world. That's what the Matrix and the brain in the vat theory say, that you live in the real world, but your brain is stimulated by the electrodes and the parts coming into your body to make you think that you're living in the real world. Okay? In simulation theory, you don't have a body in the real world. You are just a bunch of code, a bunch of ones and zeros. Okay, binary code. So Bolstrom says if we can imagine that processing power just increasing, it's going to get to a point in time where it is capable of simulating human beings. So he says, why should we believe? He's very confident we're living in a simulation. There's a number of other people who are quite confident as well. Elon Musk is one of them. Maybe you guys heard Elon Musk talk about it. Why does he think we're certain that we're living in a simulation? So let me explain to you. Let's see this white rabbit here, okay? And I'll get a couple of texts. Here's a blue box. And then here's some black boxes. All right, 10 boxes. 1 of them is blue, 9 of them are black. The rabbit is in one of the boxes. You don't know which box it's in. What is the probability of it being in the blue box?
1 in 10.
1 in 10. Okay. What is the probability of it being in the black box?
9
in 10. Okay. So Bolstrom's saying If in the future we're going to run simulations, we're going to run millions of them. Everyone's going to be running. Just like how teenagers every night simulate World War II playing Call of Duty, all right? So in the future, people are going to simulate whole universes, okay, with the computer processing power to simulate them. And so, in a way, you're like this rabbit, all right? You're like this white rabbit. And there's more than 10 possibilities, okay? I'm saying they're running millions of simulations. So what we have is we've got millions of boxes that are simulations, and then one box that is the real world. Okay, you're conscious, you're aware, but if we can simulate consciousness and awareness, then the odds are infinitely low that you're living in the real world. It's much, much higher that you're living in a simulated reality. Okay, so that's the mathematical argument he makes. Okay, he says, if post-humans, that's what he calls them, post-humans, they're sort of living far in the future, they've got this infinite processing power, great technology, they are almost certainly being run on a very broad scale. One can easily imagine millions of individuals running thousands of variations on hundreds of themes, each containing billions of simulated individuals, scientists, hobbyists, artists, and even school children all running simulations. Trillions and trillions of these simulated individuals would exist, all believing they're real, all believing they live in the real world. In 2003, there were approximately 6 billion people living on Earth. In a post-human age, there may very well be trillions of software-based humans living in the year 200 or 2021. The math is simple. The overwhelming majority of these individuals are wrong. They believe they're biological, but they are not. There is no reason to exclude our civilization from this calculation. So here's a question. What evidence would suggest that you're not living in a simulation? What evidence would suggest that you're living in the real world? So let's have a chat amongst ourselves. See if we can come up with any ideas in the next minute of what you could find that would tell you you're not living in a simulated world. What you could come across. Okay. Any ideas? Does anyone have an idea of anything they could find that would tell you that you're living in the real world? Okay. Can anyone tell me why they can't find definitive proof? Travis?
You can't know this for sure.
Because we can't know for sure? Hey?
If there is infinite processing power to process and create exclusive thought and awareness, then there's no way that we can tell whether we have awareness or whether we are programmed with awareness.
Yeah. Emma? Yeah.
Because there's been so many ideas given to us that suggest that we could be in a simulation, that there's not many could suggest that we're not.
Okay, all right, so we've got good evidence to believe it, not many, not much for or against it. So let's say you could come up with some experiment or some evidence. Let's say you could find some evidence, actually, that you're living in a simulation. Let's pretend that. Let's say you've come across some evidence that you're living in a simulation. Okay? Could this evidence be simulated? Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
Okay? Theoretically, yes. So what about we ask the opposite question? What evidence would suggest that you are living in a simulation? This would be glitches in the Matrix, encounters with NPCs.
That was suggested deja vu.
Deja vu is
Yeah.
a great example. Aiden's mentioned that one.
Mandela effect.
Mandela effect. Okay, that might be one that you can look up a bit.
When you twitch.
Yeah, involuntary spasms, memory loss.
Okay. So look, I've spoken specifically about this form of simulation theory. Okay? You could even say, yep, simulation theory is true, but we don't know if they're going to be conscious beings. It could be a form like the brain in the vat. Okay, in the brain in the vat, you're sort of involuntarily plugged into a machine. It could be every night you come home from high school in the year 2200 and you've plugged in, you put your VR headset on, you've plugged into the matrix, into the simulated world. And if, like this is disconcerting, if you can run simulations at a really rapid speed, you could come home from school in the year 2200 and live a whole life, you know, in the span of an hour. And then, you know, wake up and go back to school the next day. Okay, so we've got some questions on page 45, talking specifically about simulation theory. And that's really all we're going to get on with today, so we'll finish there, I reckon.